What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, the official Cliffy J, and I'm back with another video. And today I'm be giving you guys my runner-up rankings for the Big Brother New Era. That's seasons 23 to seasons 27. At this point, I'm the BB New Era guy. Y'all know I'm doing my rewatch of a bunch of seasons to do my official ranking of all of the US seasons. But before I do that, I got to keep pushing out this content. Y'all already know the criteria behind these lists. I'm going based off their strategic, social, and physical ability, mostly on paper, not their actual game ability. That's more of ranking them based on their game ability, ranking them based off player rankings. This is a performance ranking type of thing, and ranking their games on paper in comparison to each other. We have 5 runner ups to rank. So let's go ahead and get into this ranking. And at number 5, I've got Derek F from Big Brother 23. He didn't really do anything significant for the most part. He wasn't particularly liked or respected, and he genuinely got carried by the cookout, specifically Xavier. He also ruined his relationships in some capacity with Kylan. He definitely ruined his relationships with Ozza by the end of it, and Tiffany, um, and even other players other than them. Like, he didn't have a good social. He didn't really even like him and Lil D had a little beef there, even too low key. So he just never really had a great game in any capacity. He was terrible in the challenges too. And he was like, I would say he was definitely carried through the game. And you could point out, oh, hold on, let me turn my alarm off. You could point out multiple moments where different cookout members carried him in the game, depending on what your context you're saying, whether it's competitively, socially, strategically. Bro was getting carried. He didn't really do anything, and he had a negative social game. And at number 4, I got MJ from BB27. And I think BB26, my fault. And I think most people would probably actually have her at the bottom, but I got MJ right here. As you guys know, I really do love MJ. I just know she played such a bad game. Early she was aligned with Matt and Leah, and they ended up on the bottom when Matt went home. She joined in on the Cedric blind side for no real reason, I might add, but she did. And then she was pulled in by Chelsea and Brooklyn. And after Tucker was sent home, we were really able to see her terrible logic and terrible gameplay. Like, her strategic mind was just not there. And she just made bad decision after bad decision in the name of loyalty to Chelsea and Cam. Worst of all, being the Leah blindside, which she executed like herself, which just didn't make any sense. It was just a really bad move to make. And then she ends up taking Chelsea to the end and losing unanimously, and was somehow surprised that she lost unanimously. It's really bad, but she's a complete comp beast. She was aligned with Leah. She was aligned with Chelsea. She was aligned with Cam. And these players, for the most part, actually did have her back. So I do think it is some credit there to be given that she was able to earn that loyalty and earn that trust. And her and Cam had a pretty good relationship. So I definitely think that she was a solid player in the game for sure. But solid is honestly actually being kind of generous. But yeah, solid player in the game. And at number 3, I've got in general, these top 3 are all 3 guys who I think kind of ran the end game, or at least ran portions of the game, but they have significant flaws. And honestly, I've changed my opinion on these players just a little bit since I talked about them in previous videos. Let's go ahead and pull up the first one. I've got Vince, and I got Vince at 3 because Vince is a very good player, and I think he's a better player than his ranking obviously alludes to. He turned on strong allies, and he turned them into bitter jurors like Keanu, Kelly, and Lauren. These should have been guaranteed votes for him, but eventually he did pick Morgan over them, over all of them, right? And that's honestly one of the weirdest things to me. He chose Morgan over all of them, which never really made sense because the judges were never his alliance. They were never an alliance that were going to lead to him winning the game. Him having Lauren, Keanu, and Kelly on the block in the same week is crazy. Someone like Lauren is very comparable to Morgan in terms of for his game, but Lauren was just better for his game. It would have made more sense to put Morgan on the block. Obviously, he couldn't do it at that point, but in general, it would have made more sense to go against the judges and to fully side with his people. Shake Morgan up a little bit, put some pressure on her, make the game harder on her. She played a relatively easy game when she was just winning because there was no pressure. She always had Ashley. Ava didn't really have her back, but at points it made sense for Ava to vote with her. People like Keanu were going to go for her, but people like Keanu were also having a lot of pressure on them with the fact that they always had everyone coming for them. Like, honestly, I think that he could have played the game a lot different and put these other players in terms of Ashley and Morgan's in more precarious situations, which probably would have made the game a lot harder for her, right? If he had shook her up a little bit, right, and maybe she was just able to breeze through all the comps, he really could have honestly turned the game on its head. And he would have always beat Kelly, Lauren, and Keanu at the end versus Morgan. He wasn't going to beat Morgan, and he didn't beat Ashley. So he made the game harder on himself. And honestly, Ava probably would have been a harder beat, especially with the jury, than Kelly, Lauren, and Keanu. Let's keep it real, bruh. And these last two, I'd say they played really similar games to a certain extent, always being connected to power players. They had a few close allies, which led to them being a part of the huge flip in the game and a very strong alliance being built. And they were both crowned by multiple people before the game ended. I think it's an alarm going on out there outside my house. But no, they were both crowned as the winner of the game by multiple people before these people left out of the game. They were even telling other players, can't go far with this guy, they'll beat you and stuff like that. And seemingly out of nowhere, like honestly, in my opinion, it was out of nowhere that they both lost the game in a jury vote when they probably should have won just based off their game on paper. And I've already said this before, but at number two, and I will say this, my number two, I think is probably the better player and the player I would trust more going into any given season. But the number one, I think, played just a better, cleaner game that it just it could be more marveled at when you just look at the two compared to each other. And that leads me into my number two. I got Monty. His early game was a bit sloppy. He talked a little too much, spreading information to players that didn't really trust him. Even when the cookout, not the cookout, even when the leftovers were created, Michael and Brittany didn't really trust him. And that is honestly a very pivotal part of the entire game and the way the game kind of ran. Because if Michael and Brittany made the moves to get rid of Monty, which they clearly wanted to do, Michael or Brittany likely wins the season for the most part, right? This is where I'm someone that's like, okay, is that a net positive or a net negative for Monty's game? At first, I was like, okay, that's a net negative because he was so out of the loop and stuff like that. But I start to realize that is being in the loop as important as just being in the alliance? Like, I don't really know because I see these coasters, like the next player I got, like this, like Monty. These players are coasters that essentially got into these strong alliances, excuse me, and just ride them out. They just ride out these strong alliances. And that's essentially what a part of Monty's strategy coming into the game was. He wanted to play the game like Xavier. Yeah, he doesn't have much knowledge of the game before he went on there, but that's one thing we know is that he watched Xavier's game and he liked the win an early HOH, put myself in position, then kind of lay low for the rest of the season kind of gameplay. And I do think his first HOH was a bit sloppy in the capacity of he's giving this information to Nicole and Daniel, and they're not believing him for no real reason. And that's kind of where I got to look at stuff holistically. Was it smart for them not to believe him? No, it wasn't. It wasn't smart for them not to believe them, really. Like, so I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, well, Monty, that was such a bad move. Indy and Jasmine trusting Michael and Brittany more than Monty also doesn't necessarily make that much sense. Uh, Kind of can understand trusting Brittany, I guess. But even with Michael playing both sides, which he gets a lot of credit for playing both sides, the ones that were really playing both sides were Joseph and Kyle. Monty just thought he was playing both sides. And when that was exposed, that's kind of when Monty started to lay low. If you kind of look at the overall trajectory of his game, when Michael and Brittany brought information to him that Indy and Jasmine were willing to target him or they were not as close to him as he thought they were. I don't really remember if they just gave him all the information, but I know they at least kind of gave him a little inkling that I don't know if you really can trust him like that. After that, Monty begins to lay low for essentially the entire game until the Terrence boot week. Until about the Terrence boot week, Monty's radio silent from a strategic standpoint. He's letting Joe and Kyle and Michael, these other players, kind of handle that aspect of the game. I think he realized that that ain't really my strong suit. I'm a social player. I'm a physical player. I'm gonna gain this trust with Taylor, gain this trust with Joseph, gain this trust with Turner, which we're going to talk about that also. When we get to the point where they come back, Turner does not want to target Monty at all. He actually brings the pound back together. And had Michael not won the veto, Monty's not even in discussion to be backdoored. And we can say, okay, well, he would have got backdoored in a regular season. But in a regular season, we don't have someone just for no reason racially picking out a group and saying they're working together. I'm not going to down Monty's game because someone was racially targeting them. You're going for him because you're going after this side. This is the side that you've already decided to racially divide and say, okay, well, Turner, this person, I'm Taylor, Michael, not Michael, Taylor, Monty, Terrence. These were all working together for some odd reason. They're definitely working together. You're not going to tell me that doesn't have a big reason why he targeted someone that clearly had his back and that was one of his number one allies for the entire game until he decided to pull out a random racial like alliance, ethnic alliance that did not exist. That's my biggest thing. Monty's game only really has negatives because of the racism when we pass early game. Early game, yeah, we can say he was playing sloppy, but he played a pretty solid coaster type game that is one of it's the meta of modern Big Brother. He played the meta of modern Big Brother type game, and his game would have been a lot more impressive if he wasn't dealing with outward racism. He was dealing with clear outward racism. The Pound should have been an alliance that stuck together and made it very deep in the game, but Kyle was being racist. Joseph and Monty and Taylor's game are heavily affected by Kyle's racial acts because he was close to these players. These are players that he definitely could have trusted. And if he wasn't racist, he would have knew he could trust these players. So to me, Monty's game is built around threat management, especially after early game, built around being a strong social player that is trustable, and then built around being someone that can win out. And he essentially did that from like the final six or final seven. He's also the one that took Michael out, convinced Turner to make the move. That's the thing. I'm not gonna sit up here and say Kyle's such a mastermind for masterminding Turner. Hell no. Anybody can mastermind puppeteer Turner. Like, let's keep it real, right? And if you're gonna give him that credit, you got to give Monty the same exact credit, right? Um, yeah, now overall, when I look at it, Monty is actually a very good player, but he is like a KC Xavier type player. He is in that archetype of a player. Very good, relatively well rounded, not the greatest strategically, but so good socially and physically that they are the meta for modern Big Brother. They're literally the meta, right? His game is heavily affected by things that are out of his control, in my opinion, for the most part, outside of early game issues. And at number one, I got Matt, and his game is actually really good. It's nearly flawless in some capacity, right? Like that's nah, that can't be true. He lost. So it can't be flawless. Okay, a really good middleman. He played the middleman position really well throughout majority of the game. He was in all these alliances with Suri, but also was in all these alliances that Suri was clearly building that weren't necessarily real. He was part of the real ones and the fake ones, and he kind of just rode that middle position until the big flip. And then at that point, after Izzy goes, him and Jag essentially just run the rest of the game. And he's the one that's getting his way in most of the instances. He's the one that had the social capital for them to be able to make most of the move they made. He's the one that pulled Bowie Jane into the alliance. For the most part, Matt had the game figured out, bro. If we're just gonna keep it real. And then most people, this same thing with Monty. People were leaving the game saying Michael or Monty. You know what I'm saying? Saying Monty has a high chance of winning. Saying that Monty's playing the best game left currently in the game. And then same with Matt. Everyone's saying Matt's gonna win, even telling Jack to his face, Matt's gonna win. Jack takes him to the end and still somehow beats him for no reason. He beat him for no. I bathed in. No, I'm not gonna do it again. But he literally just beat him for no reason. To me, that's like more an indictment on the jury, and in my opinion, on both juries. Sorry to break it to you, Taylor Stans. that's an indictment on both of the juries rather than these two players' game ability. Now, obviously leaning towards Matt because it's not many negatives in Matt's game. Like just from a on paper standpoint. Won a few comps. He had to uh go to the end with Jag, essentially. He couldn't get him out ever late game. It just wasn't possible. He won every time, every week. And then he didn't have to save Jag. That's the thing. He didn't have to. It wouldn't have ruined his game not saving Jag. But it was a smart move to do that, though. Let's be honest. Saving someone that is very loyal to you already and going to make them more loyal to you, and they're a pretty strong competitor themselves. Why would I not save this guy? Like it's the most best strategic move to make. So it's very similar between them two. Is that I think perception and the jury roundtable, like people at the jury house, are more of a reason that I think both of these people lost rather than them actually playing worse games than the player they went against. And I think that Taylor taking Monty, I mean, I think Monty taking Taylor is not a bad decision. Or no, it's a bad decision. You know what? It's not a bad decision. It was just the wrong decision. Because logic is not always right. Logically, Turner's game on paper was better than Taylor's game. I don't give a damn. That's just what it is. On paper, his game was better. And if he was able to explain his game with like good logic, bruh, that game even could possibly be able to be should on paper is just as good if not better than Monty's game. So Taylor's game on paper was clearly the worst. The only part where you could say she was better maybe was jury management. Like, I guess. Because you could say Monty mishandled his relationship with Brittany. But other than but also that was also partly Brittany. Like Brittany was acting low key weird. I mean, what we supposed to invite you up here to lay in the bed with us when you're the only one in a relationship and we're all single? And Turner's single is way different than yours because Turner probably could crack something and then be okay. If you did anything with anybody, you and your husband probably would break up. I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping. You also got an older vibe than everybody here. We were like young, kicking it. You got an old lady vibe. So I don't know. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I'm hating too much. Maybe I'm just throwing random things out there, but I think that Matt played the best game out of all the runner-ups, then Monty, then Vince, which I'm actually very surprised about. But his judgment wasn't significantly clouded by anything. Whereas you don't see that with Matt or Monty. I mean, his judgment was significantly clouded by Morgan. You don't really see that with Matt or Monty. They're not getting puppeteered, right? And then MJ, she's MJ at 4, and then Derek at 5. And that is the end of today's video, guys. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Push the notification bell so you can be notified every time I drop a new lit banger. Peace.